Welcome back to a new video on this channel. In this tutorial you will learn how you can upload some data to a database using a CSV file. So what we'll do here is we'll expand the dashboard application from the last two videos, so the CRUD application as well as the download data application. The new part here is the upload CSV section. You can select a .csv file from your computer, and after clicking on the arrow button it will automatically insert these values into the database and update the UI. To get started, I will first install all the required modules. For that you can go to the top right corner here, go to Manage Palette and then to Install. So we'll need a few modules here. The first one is going to be the MySQL connection. So Node-RED Node MySQL. You can click on Install here. Next we will need the dashboard. Click on Install as well, and lastly the table. So that's going to be Node-RED Node UI table. Okay, now you can see that we have all of them installed and we can start importing the flows from the last few videos. So what we'll need to import here is firstly the CRUD application. So you can click on Import. You can select the file. You can download this file from my GitHub repository. And then you will first go to the SQL section and then install the CRUD JSON. I will import it right here. And I can now delete the old flow, and now we have it right here. And I will call this flow dashboard. And now if I deploy, you can see that I don't have the connection to the database. So if you export the SQL connector, you will have to reinsert your username and password. Okay, if you insert those again and deploy again, you should see that it's connected. And we can go to the dashboard. If this icon up here doesn't appear for you, you can just reload the entire page. And then you should have it. Okay, so here you can see we have all of it, and there's also some data in here. So next I will import the download flows. So that's from the last video, and this is also found in the SQL folder on the GitHub repository. Now you can go insert that into a new flow, and you have to import a copy. And now if we deploy here and go to the dashboard, you can see that we have the same again, and now we have this button here which allows us to download the data. And now if I open that up in a text editor, I've used Visual Studio Code here, you can see that we get the data from the database in a CSV file. So the next step is to actually implement the upload functionality to our dashboard. So for that I will create a new flow, and the name of the flow is going to be upload data. And in order to upload, we will need the upload node. So I will go to Manage Palette again, and I will install the upload node. So it's going to be Node-RED contrib UI upload. Okay, you can install that. And now we can start actually implementing the upload functionality. So first I will insert the upload. Now we can configure that. So I would make sure that it's in the new value group, so it should be underneath this insert value button here. I want to pre-specify the size, so it's going to be 6 by 6. I would like to give it a title of upload CSV, and here we can also accept or specify a file type. So this is going to be the pre-selected file type when going into the file explorer. So you can only select the files that are specified here. So we will use .csv. The thing here is that even though you specified this, you can still select different files by changing the options. So we will first have to check if it's really a CSV file, and I'll show you how to do that right now. First we'll need a debug node, so we can see how we can actually define what's wrong. And we go to the complete MSG object, and if we deploy, now I'll select the file which is of type CSV. And now if I selected that, I can press the arrow here and this will import the file. And now we can see in the debug that we have 3 different objects here. So the payload, that's just the buffer from the file, we'll see that afterwards. The parts are some informations about the file, and in the file you can see that the file type is text/CSV. So what I would like to do now is to check if the file type is correct, and if it's not, I would like to give the user a dashboard notification. We can do that using a switch node. So if I go in here, I will specify the name as check for CSV format. I would like to check the property msg.file.type. So that's going to be this one right here. And now I copy this value and I say, okay, if it is text.csv, we are all good and we'll go out on output 1. And otherwise, so if it's not that, we would like to go out on output 2. The next step is to create an error message. For that, I'll use a change node. And we'll connect it to the output 2 of the switch. Okay, so here we'll set the msg.payload. The payload is the text of the error message. Here we'll say you can only upload .csv files. And then we'll also add an msg.topic. This is going to be the title of the notification, and this is going to be wrong file type. And now I will connect this one to a notification. So that's going to be a dashboard notification. And in here, I would like the layout to be OK/cancel dialog, so that the user actually has to press something in order for the notification to go away. Okay, so now we can test that out. So now if we upload a wrong file, so now I've selected a JSON file, and now if I want to import that, you can see that I get the error message which says that I can only upload .csv files. So that seems to work as I wished. So next we have to handle the correct path. So I'll use a debug here again to see what happens. Okay, so we'll just use the payload. As we saw before, that the file content is in the payload. And I'll select the correct file again. And now I can press on the arrow button. And now we can see that we get a buffer here. And if you click on the raw sign, you can see that we actually get the string representation. So to do that step in a function node, we can do the following. We'll need a function node, and we will call that one Preprocessing. And I'll say the input is equal to msg.payload. So this is a buffer, as you can see right here. And now I would like to use the buffer method .toString. This will do the exact same thing as clicking on here does. And another thing I would like to pre-process is to remove those quotation marks, as we don't need them right here. So we will do that. So delete unwanted symbols from strings. So let's do msg.payload is equal to the input dot. Now this is a string, so we can use the string method replace all. And then I would like to replace all the quotation marks with an empty string. And that's all we need to do right here. So we'll use the debug again to see if that worked. Now one tip here is that you don't have to upload it again. You can just click this button here again and it will inject the same again. And here you can now see that we get a string that's the exact same thing as in our CSV file. In order to work with this data, I would like to use objects, as that's way easier as strings. And in order to convert that, we can use the CSV Node. That's a standard node coming with Node-RED. And it allows us to convert objects to CSV files or CSV format, but also the other way around, so CSV to object options. So make sure that you have the correct separator. In this case it's commas, so we will use commas here. We don't have to skip any rows, but I would like to select this option here that the first rows contains the column names. So you can see here we have ID, timestamp and value, and those are the column names of our CSV. And the last thing I would like to add is that the output is not a message per row, but an array of messages. So each row in this CSV will be an object inside of an array. Okay, so we will check out again how that looks with another debug. And you won't need this one again. And now we can see we get an array with 3 objects, and we have ID, timestamp and value, and those correspond exactly to what we've got here in the string. Now I will store these values in a flow variable so that I can easily access them later on. So I'll use a change for that. And I will just set flow.csv content to msg.payload. Okay, so let's test that again. Re-inject this one, and now if you go to the context data under flow and refresh, you can see that we have the exact same data in here right now. The next thing I would like to do is to select the column names from the database. As the user can upload any CSV file, I want to only insert the columns which are also found in the database. So of course I could manually set those to constant values using an inject and a change node, for example, but I would like to get this information from the database to make it a bit more usable. I use this function node to request this information. I'll call it get column names, and in here I will set the topic to show columns from, and then the table name, so that's sensor values, and that's gonna be it. And then I'll have to insert this to a SQL node, just like that. We can reuse the database connection, and let's do this. Okay, so I would like to show you how that looks. So we have to re-inject here again, and now you can see that you have an array of 3 objects. That's because we have 3 columns in our database, and for each column you can see some information about it. So the field is the name of the field, the type is the data type, and there's some other information on what the settings were on this table. So now I would like to store this information in the flow variables as well, but what I would like to do is to skip the ID, as this is an auto increment property, so I don't really want to insert this, so the database can automatically increase this ID. So to do that, I'll use a function node, and I call it column names. So first I will get the data from the SQL node, so input is equal to msg.payload. Then I'll specify an empty array called column names, so var column names is equal to an empty array. Now I would like to insert all of the columns except the ID, so I will filter out unwanted columns, so just the ID for now, and I'll use a for loop, so for let object of input. So this object right here will just be one of those objects here. Now I would like to say if the object.field, so this will refer to this string right here, is equal to ID, I would like to continue. So continue just jumps to the next iteration in this for loop. And if that's not the case, I would like to add the column or the object to the column names. So column names dot push object, and that's all we really need to do here. Last step is to set it to a flow variable, so flow.set column names, and we set the value right here. So we can check if that works, so we can delete the debug again, deploy, delete the debug terminal. Here we can re-inject this, And now if you go to the context data and refresh the flow, you can see that we get the column names here and that the ID is not existing anymore. Okay, so the last step here is to actually insert the values. As we're working with different data types, we have to do some conversions here, so it's going to be a bit more complicated. Okay, so I will call this one insert value. So the first thing I will do is import those two variables. I will do that right here. So constant column names is equal to flow.get, and here we say flow.get column names. And if it doesn't exist, I would like to set it to undefined. Same goes for the CSV content. Now, one thing I like to do is to make a few guard clauses where we can check whether or not these values are actually available. And if they're undefined, I would like to say that this flow.column names is undefined. So if column names equals undefined, I would like to error, so node.error flow.csv content is undefined. And now I would like to return void 0. So this just stops the flow right here, and it also won't return anything on the right, on the output of the node. So this will stop the flow right here. Then we'll do the exact same for the CSV content. And I actually named this wrong, it's going to be column names. So the next step is to get the data types that we actually need to check here. So get data type from column names. So I would just like to have a dictionary where we have timestamp and value. So we specify an empty dictionary. Column properties is equal to an empty dictionary. And now I have to loop through column names. So for let object of column names. Now I would like to set column properties, and here I use object.field. So this will be timestamp and value, and I would like to set this to object of type. So here we get a dictionary with the field as a key and the type as a value. I'll show you quickly how that looks with using a node.warn column properties. All right. So we can go to the dashboard again, re-inject. Now we can see that we have the column timestamp is of type timestamp, and the column value is of type decimal 10,2, which is correct. Okay, so next we have to specify the actual SQL queries. So I can delete that here. Generate SQL query. What I'll do here is that I'll generate a single query for each row, and I'll add those to an array, and in the end I'll combine that array to one single command. So let's start by defining the array. Then I'll have to loop through the entire content of the CSV. So for let object in of CSV content. So this will be just one row of the CSV file. Here I'll specify first of all the column names that we have to insert, and as well the values according to those column names. So I'll specify two empty arrays again. Let column names equal an empty array, and let values equal empty array as well. Now I'll loop through the object, so that's just going to loop through every single key here. So for let column in object, alright, so first I'll check if a column actually has to be inserted or not. So if we go to the ID, you can see that this is not in the column names array, so I will skip that. So let's say if the column is in the column properties. So this will just check if my column, so ID, is in the column properties dictionary. That's the one we saw or that we specified before. If that is the case, then we can move on, and if not, we will just skip that part. And the first thing is that I'll get the data type. So let data type equal column properties of column. So this will give me this here, so timestamp or decimal. And then I'll push the column to the column name. So column names dot push column. So this will add the ID to this array right here. And next I will check if I have to actually format something. You'll see in a minute why that's important. So format values when they are of type timestamp. So the problem here is that I can't insert this time format directly, so I'll have to do a conversion. So if the data type is equal to timestamp, so if it's the timestamp, it has the data type timestamp, so then I will do that. Then I'll read in the timestamp, so let timestamp, and I'll define it as a new date, so new date of the object from the column. And as the hour is 1 hour off due to time zones, I'll just add it right here. So timestamp dot set hours, and then timestamp dot get hours plus 1. Okay, that's one thing. And now I have to push this value to the values array. So the thing here is now that even though I've converted this, I still can't insert it directly to SQL. So for that I'll have to add an SQL command to it, and I'll do that using a template literal. And now I'll use the SQL command from Unix time, and in here I'll set the timestamp. Now I'll use the .getTime method. This will get me the timestamp in milliseconds, and since SQL takes the timestamps in seconds, I'll have to divide by 1000. Okay, that's it for timestamp, and if it's anything else than the timestamp, I will just push the object without changing anything. If you have more than just the timestamp you have to convert, you can just add more if blocks here, and that will sort that out. Okay, so the last step is to actually create the insert query. So we'll do that right here, again using template literals. So insert into, then I'll specify the table name, so sensor values. Now I'll have to specify the columns I would like to add. So this is where I can use the column names array. And what I'll do here is use the join method. So this will just join all the elements of the array together using a separator. And that's going to be a string afterwards, so we'll get the required column names in string in the format that SQL actually expects. And then we'll specify the values you would like to insert, so values, and here we use the values array, and we'll do the same trick again, so join with the comma as a separator. And the last step is to add this query to the query array, so query array dot push query. Okay, and now we can set the topic. msg.topic is equal to query array dot join, and right here we will have to join it with semicolons, as each of those is going to be one single query. So now we can have that. Before I insert it, I will check it with a debug node. Make sure to select the topic as this is where the query will be, and I'll deploy, re-inject, and now we can see the query. So here we have insert into sensor values, we have timestamp and value, and the values are from Unix time, this thing here, and 4 for the value. Then it gets separated using a semicolon, and then the next one starts again. So that looks about right. So now I can use another SQL node. So SQL here. So we'll reuse the tutorial. After uploading the values, I would like to refresh this table so that the user gets immediate feedback on what happened. I'll use a link out for that. And I'll name it uploaded data. And now I'll have to go to the dashboard, and I would like to inject into this select here, as this updates the data in the table. So I can just inject it into this junction here. So I'll use a link in, and I'll connect it to this link out and just inject it in here. Alright, so that should work. So let's test it. I can browse again, select a file, and if I now inject, we can see that we get the values. To check if it actually works, we will delete all of them. And now if I inject again, you can see that we get all of these 3 values. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.